Hey Rock on Beer viewers, welcome to another brew day. Just getting set up for the mash here, and today I'm doing kind of a special brew. I am going to be using the new Nordic beer project's Vandregær, which is, if you don't know about this one, I'll put a link in the description to my article explaining it, but it's a project here in Denmark, or it was started here in Denmark by some Danish brewers and some PhDs and stuff like that, and they are looking to one of the things they're looking to do is find a true Nordic yeast, a true Danish yeast, and this is one of their first goes at it. I don't know how well you can see. Went and picked this up the other day. It is a yeast that is isolated from apples, the skin of apples on a small Danish island, and yeah. So we're brewing Farmhouse IPA today. All right, we'll go off tripod for this part. So I just finished milling the grain, and we're doing a little bit over 20 liters, 20 to 30 liters, depending on where my efficiency ends up. And I'm doing a kind of an IPA blend. It's about 60% pale ale malt, 15% Vienna, 15% wheat, and then the last 10% is split between Crystal 40 and Crystal 60. So that's going to be the grist, and I think it should come out. I've used it before in an IPA. I think that it should make a nice base for this yeast. And yeah, I'll talk to you on the mash in. All right, so on this brew day, I'm gonna try and talk a little bit more about my process. And I am a cooler mashing type of guy. I've also done a fair bit of brew in a bag, and that works really well too. I like the results of that. I use it for smaller batches, but I get the absolute best results from my beer and doing mash in the cooler here, just because, I mean, the temperature, it barely drops at all in this. This is a really thick-walled cooler. And basically what I do is I heat the strike water in a kettle, and I heat it up pretty well. I heat it up to almost about 80 degrees, and then I get it in those buckets. I measure it out, and then oh, it's a little dirty today. Yeah, oh well. Get it in there. It loses temperature. You know, every time you're moving it, it's losing some temperature. So I heat it up really high, get it in the bucket, get it in here, and then I close this up for a minute. And I know some people will put a liter or two of boiling water in there and then drain that out to kind of heat the plastic up. I just heat the strike water up a little bit higher. Does the same thing, and I don't have to heat any other separate water. And then basically, yeah, I'm just gonna. Why don't we? You can take a look inside. If I can get the tripod situated, you can see that my cooler has a false bottom, and that's for, that'll just separate the wort. You can also use like braided bathroom hose or something like that. And then it's got a bit of plastic that goes to a ball valve on the outside. I use that to drain the mash. And it works great. I hardly have to do any vorlaughing. It comes out you know, super clear. And like I said, this this setup, it hardly loses any temperature during the actual mash. So I find that easier than trying to make, you know, on the fly corrections with a direct fired like I've used in BIAB. I'm just gonna take a quick temperature reading here. We're a little, strike water is a little high, so I am just gonna let this, I'm just gonna give it a stir with this trusty brewing spoon, and then I am going to just let it drop a degree or two with the lid open, giving it a stir every once in a while before I get the grain in. I've brewed, you know, I don't know, 50, 60 batches in this cooler, so I have it pretty dialed in at what temperature how much I lose per kilo of grain. So I know that I need to mash this in about 70 degrees, 69 degrees to get to my right temperature. But yeah, we'll be back when the grain goes in. All right, so got the temperature right where I wanted, about 70 degrees. You might notice that the water looks. You might notice that I smacked the tripod. You might notice that the water is a bit cloudier now. It's because I put in some pH stabilizer, mash stabilizer, which I always forget, but somehow remembered today. So yeah, now it's time to get that grain in there, get those sugars coming out. And when I'm doing this alone, I like to just pour in a bit, then give it a stir, and then I don't have to spend a whole ton of time at the end breaking up dough balls. We've talked about dough balls before. It's basically when the grain clumps together and you're wasting sugar, because if the water can't get to it, then it can't become booze later on. So dough balls bad, stirring good. But that's also why you want to make sure you have a really good idea of your temperatures, because the more you got to stir the mash to find those dough balls and crush them up, then you know, the more temperature you're likely to lose. Did a pretty fine crush today, so not gonna have that big a problem. And it's I run a pretty loose mash. Yeah, I mean, you can see that it's not a very thick mash. I've got my profile and Beersmith set for make sure it's pretty loose. I like that. I think that I think it's easier to work with, and it's I mean, you might have to Vorloff just a tiny bit more, but I think with all that water in there, I get a really nice efficiency. I get above 80 every time, so that's really good for this kind of setup. And I don't really have any reason to change any of it. But yeah, you can see that this is a pretty loose mash. And I can already tell that there's basically no dough balls in here. Just fiddle around with my spoon and you can pretty much see it's a nice plus of the loose mash. And then so basically what I'm going to do is I gave it a nice stir around looking for dough balls, and now I'm going to check that the temperature's where I want it. And if I have done it correctly, we should be right around 65 degrees Celsius. Oh, 64 and rising. Come on. 64.5, we're slowing down. 60. Oh man. 65. 64.9. 65. 64.9. Oh. 65.2. Uh-oh. We got a hot spot. All right. But I mean, that's right there. That little range there is perfect. I'll just give it a little stir to move that hot spot around. One last poke in here because I'm neurotic. Rising. 64. Come on. This is really exciting TV, I know. You're all on the edge of your seat. Oh. Come on, how perfect is that? Boom. All right. Now, seal her up for an hour mash. Go over to my beersmith and start the timer. If I remember where it is on the computer version. Run. All right. Yeah, so now we got an hour to kill. I thought I'd just take this opportunity to talk maybe a little bit more about the yeast, just because we've got the mash in, and I got my coffee here. I'm driving today, so can't have any beer during the brew day. That's too bad, but at least I've got my instant coffee, which, let's just talk about yeast. So, this is, we went to a local brewery that is participating, pro brewer, that's participating in this experiment, this project, whatever you want to call it. And they had just finished fermenting, and the reason they're calling it Vandregær, which in Danish means wandering yeast, is that basically what they did is they isolated 3 different yeasts, 2 Saccharomyces yeasts and 1, I can't remember what the name of that family is, but it's usually used actually for wine. It's dusty glasses. Let's take those off. So they did 3 equal proportion of all 3 of those yeasts, and that's what we've got here. This was collected from the fermentation tank at Inneslev Brewery after their beer was done fermenting. Went in, and the brewer there, he pulled this right out of the conical fermenter. It's about 225 milliliters, and about little over 150 of that is thick yeast slurry here. So this should be more than enough to ferment. It should be more than enough to ferment this 20-liter batch today, and we actually have even more yeast in a flask in there. But that one I don't trust as much as this lab sterilized bottle here. But so it's a mixed culture yeast. So why not do a farmhouse ale with it? And I think a lot of the Danish brewers, the pro brewers, are going to be doing some kind of lighter styles, which is that's fine, because I mean it's good to get the profile of the yeast, I guess, is what the end result is. But since it's open to home brewers, I decided that I would do, something more out there. And so this beer is going to become a Nordic American fusion farmhouse ale. So we're going to be doing a Farmhouse IPA with this yeast. Haven't completely decided on the hops yet. It's going to be all American hops, obviously, with the Nordic American, and leaning towards the usual suspects. Got some Citra in there. I got some Cascade laying around in there. I've got some Centennial. Got some Mosaic even. That might come into play. Could be really interesting. But yeah, I'm really excited about how this beer is going to be. There's really no data on this yeast, so it's a big old crapshoot on what it's actually going to taste like, how it's actually going to ferment. I got a few insider tips from the brewer at Innislu, but I mean, yeah, it's like it's totally new frontier, and pretty excited about it. Now I'm gonna finish my lukewarm coffee and watch this timer tick by. But I just wanted to say a few things about the yeast, and well, hopefully you'll see it next time on a tasting video. That is, if it turns out at all. All right, back to your regularly scheduled mashing.
All right, well, welcome to Voiceovers by guys who forgot to turn their lapel mic on and record audio for this segment. You can see that I'm just starting to do the Vorloff stage, which I just use a beer jug. It's a 2-liter beer jug, and I just opened the ball valve just wide open to set the grain bed down. With my false bottom, it sets and clears really quickly. So I mean, basically what you're doing is you're running wort off from the bottom, and it's going to be super cloudy and full of chunks in the beginning until your grain bed sets and starts to filter it. And then once it goes clear, which it usually goes clear about 3 or 4 liters into mine, then you can just start draining. And what I'm doing here is I'm just taking that wort that I pulled from the bottom and recirculating it back up into the top, so that it'll go through the grain bed again and get clearer. And basically all you really want to do is make sure that the wort you're pulling out is clean, because that's really going to help you later on to maximize the clarity of your beer. And you'll lose a lot less beer the less gunk you have sitting in the boil kettle. And so now I just I kind of drain through a silicone hose to kind of keep hot side aeration down. Depending on if you believe in that, then you could also just drain it straight into the bucket. I haven't had any problems doing that either. Like, just let it splash in there. And I only drain it into the bucket so I know how much I get from each Vorloff. You could also go straight into your boil kettle. And this is draining out pretty quickly, and then it's going to get ready for the sparge. Got about 120 grams altogether of hops here, all Centennial, Chinook, and Cascade at 5 and 0. So we're going for a nice dank, citrusy, piney flavor. Got a nice boil here, and 22 grams of Hercules as a bittering charge. And it should be a nice hoppy beer.
Monster Hop Edition. Okay, go ahead. Smells hoppy.
One thing I definitely wanted to do for this beer was give it a good blast of aeration, because we don't really know a lot about this yeast, so I wanted to maximize the chances of it having a really nice fermentation. So I'm going to give it a blast here of pure oxygen using a 5 micron, that little metal stone. It's called an aeration stone, but it's not made of stone, so whatever. But I just dropped it down into the wort, and you can see the air coming through now. Usually blast it for about a minute. That should give a really nice amount of oxygen dissolved into the wort, so that the yeast can really go crazy and have a healthy reproduction cycle and really get into before they start going to town on those sugars. But I do this for both beers. I'm not going to show that, but about 1 minute in the wort with a 5 micron stone, and then it's about time to pitch the yeast. All right, yeast time has arrived. We've got our sterile lab container here with our yeast slurry in it that was harvested from Innislu Whitehouse. And we're just pitching, we have about 200 milliliters of pretty thick slurry. So we're pitching 100 milliliters into each carboy. Each carboy has about 12-ish liters in it, maybe a little bit more in one. So this could be a bit of an overpitch, but better safe than sorry. And now it's in there, and time to put them to bed and cross our fingers, I guess. Hey, if you like this video, please consider subscribing. I do lots of other homebrew related stuff. You can check out my other videos. Watch me bottle some beer, watch me make some toasted oatmeal pale ale, or check me out on all my other social media type stuff. I'm at Rock on Beer just about everywhere. And stay tuned for the tasting notes from this very special yeast beer. All right, talk to you later.